On August 7, 1942, our division passed through a small village located in the upper reaches of a large river. Women, old men, and children ran out to meet us with eyes full of tears and emotional excitement. They hugged us, kissed us, and cried with joy, and a lonely woman stood motionless at the well. Skinny, pale, with a haggard face. She was looking, wanting to say something, looking but unable to speak. I scrutinized this woman's face and see that she used to be very beautiful. Straight dark eyebrows, high forehead, blonde hair. But some grief has aged her badly. Stark approached the woman and softly said, "Tell the soldiers what you saw, let everyone know what happened to you." And then, addressing the soldiers, the old man explained, "This is our neighbor, who miraculously returned from captivity." She looked around at the soldiers gathered around her with a sad look and began to tell with difficulty. There were 3 of us, 3 friends, and we were all equally miserable. All the bread from the house was taken away by the Germans. My husband was taken away the same day they captured the village. My neighbor became a widow even earlier. Her husband went to a neighboring village and never returned. My second friend was even worse off. She was left without a father and mother, and her younger brother was put in a camp by the Germans. And then one day we were told that our relatives were being held by the Germans in the city and would be taken to Germany tomorrow. We cried, we floundered, we didn't know what to do. And then we decided that we'd rather be shot, but at least we'd see our relatives for the last time. The 3 of us set out on the road, and what we saw and experienced on the way, no words can tell. One day we went down to the creek and suddenly heard gunshots. We were alarmed and ran there. We see men standing on the edge of the cliff. Naked, thin, and with their hands tied. In front of them German soldiers are ready with their weapons. And down by the stream, a mountain of bodies. My friend cried out and began to climb the sandy cliff. Up there, among those who had not yet been shot, stood her husband. She recognized him and rushed to him. Poor woman, as hard as she tried, she could not make it. Shots rang out and the men fell down. The friend cursed the Germans and the men and herself fell down the mountain. 2 Germans immediately ran up to her. One kicked her with his foot, the other hit her on the head with a rifle, but I don't remember what happened next. I felt dizzy, my eyes went black and I fell down. Then we ran from there into the woods. We came to a clearing that was littered with bodies. And they were all mangled. We saw something like a 5-pointed star carved into their backs. The marks were black, as if the wounds had been burned out with fire. Here we met another old man. He was ragged, barely able to walk. He must be a refugee. There were a lot of them back then. He asked us what we were doing here and said that they don't look for the dead. Yesterday the Germans were killing tortured prisoners here all day long, and the living ones were taken away. While we were standing here, 3 Germans suddenly came up behind us. They grinned at my friend, winked at each other and grabbed her. Before our eyes, the Germans dragged the girl into the bushes. She fought back, grabbing branches, kicking, biting, screaming. And the Germans just smirked. When they dragged her into the bushes, she cried out one last time, "Goodbye." The pain burned my whole body, and I fell down. I don't know how long I'd have lain there if that kind old man hadn't been there. Waving his cap, he blew fresh air on me, rubbed my temple. I was alive again. Like my own father, he began to persuade me, "Let's get out of here quickly." I only had one friend in my head. "No," I said, "until we find her, I'm not going anywhere." We went through all the bushes, but we found nothing but a handkerchief. We reasoned among ourselves whether the Germans had taken her away with them or thrown her off the mountain. We decided to go down to the creek and look in the ravine. An old man was walking ahead, and suddenly he was startled out of his wits. I look and see a half-naked woman hanging on a birch tree limb. Grandfather said no, she must have made a noose out of her own dress. She couldn't stand it, and preferred to die rather than lie disgraced. I cried a lot, washed my friend with clean water, and together with my grandfather we buried her. That's how I parted with my last friend. Then I parted with my grandfather. We stayed in the German paradise. It's time to go home. Grandpa went to the chapel to pray to God to spare us from this misfortune. The old man went one way and I went the other. Beyond the woods I met a column of prisoners. It's frightening to look at these people. Undressed, stripped, skinny, skin and bones. I had some breadcrumbs. I just tried to give them to the prisoners, when the escort jumped up to me and started reclining. These prisoners were driven into one small courtyard. There's a barbed wire fence all around. There's no room to stand or lie down. The exhausted fell down, but they were placed on top of each other and poured cold water from a fire pump. One elderly soldier begged, "Shoot me better, I don't want to live." With difficulty I reached home. For many days I lay in bed. Sometimes I wondered if I had dreamed about all this, but I couldn't cry.